Alright, today's project is we're going to change actually do a drain and fill of the automatic transmission fluid on this 2002 Honda Odyssey. It was last flushed about 50,000 miles ago. I had it flushed, but I figured this time I'll just go ahead and do the drain and fill myself. As part of that service, I'm going to be changing the factory transmission fluid filter, which is on the transmission. In fact, if you talk to most dealerships or Honda mechanics, they say that it doesn't have a transmission filter. It doesn't have a serviceable filter. The factory does not recommend flushes or to change the filter. But then again, we're going to change the filter anyway. I've been a lot of reading on all the different forums, the Audi Club forums, and people are having good luck changing their filters and potentially extending the life of these otherwise fragile transmissions. I've been terribly lucky with this one. You know, many people at 160,000 miles, like we're at on this one, they're on their third transmission. We're luckily still on the same original transmission with no flaws. It performs properly, shifts properly. So we're going to do this maintenance today, just do a drain and fill, and hopefully extend the life of this transmission as long as she'll go. Here's what we're going to need to do the job today. We've got 3 quarts of Honda Genuine ATF DW1. This replaces their old one. I think it was Z1, but this is the universal synthetic fluid that Honda recommends now. Transmission holds more than 3 quarts, but that's as much as it comes out on a drain and fill. Some people will actually do this 3 or 4 times and use as many as 10 quarts, where they'll drain the transmission, refill it with the 3 quarts, drive it around a little while, go through all the gears, make sure it goes into overdrive, come back, do it again, and repeat a 3rd time just to make sure they get more of a complete fluid exchange. Here's the filter. It spins on, much like an oil filter does. It has a rubber gasket here, and there's a pipe fitting that fits in on this side, and you also get a separate O-ring to put on that pipe fitting to fit in there. We'll show you more of that later when the filter goes on. You can drain a little bit more out if you get the front end up in the air somewhat, as high as you can. So that'll give me access also to the drain plug underneath. So I'm going to remove the engine cover and the air box and some other things to get down to the filter. To remove the air intake hose, we got to get some of the other things out of the way. There's some EGR lines, some vacuum lines, looks like. Okay, now for the I guess the air filter and the battery box come out. Now with the battery and the battery box out, it helps to get the battery tray out. There's the battery tray. It held on by 3 bolts. There's one back here and 2 up here. One here and one down the side. So there's actually a 4th bolt that's holding the battery tray in down on the inside of the fender. It's kind of down in there a good ways, and it's really tight to get to. Let me see if I can give you a better view of this rear lower bolt that's holding the battery tray in. You can look right down there. You can see it. Sorry about the light. Right there. So pretty hard to get to from the top. I can't get my wrench in there with enough swing, even though it's a little ratcheting wrench. I tried an extension with a universal joint and a socket, and there's really no way to get that extension through underneath there in a fashion such that I can get through all the wiring and the bracket and everything in the way. So I'm going to try it from the bottom. I can see the bolt from the bottom just if I put my head inside the left front wheel. We might be able to get to it from down there. So I'm under the car right now, under the left front. This is the driver's wheel. And if you look up here, right inside the fender well, there's that bolt from the battery tray, the lower rear bolt. There's an electrical connector right below it. I think I'll have to unclip and get out of the way, and then I could probably get a wrench on that. Alright, there's my wrench on the bolt. Sorry to dwell so much on this one little thing, but I appreciate the help with the tedious parts of a job like this. The electrical connector I was able to unplug and slide down just a little bit on its metal mounting. So now I think I've got very little swing in the wrench, but now I'm going to be able to back that bolt off just enough so I can slide the battery tray up and out. I can't imagine doing this without this ratcheting box end wrench. I don't think I could get a regular box end wrench to swing enough. I suppose you could do it with an open end wrench and just kind of a little bit at a time. But with it ratcheting, I can go one click at a time and back that bolt off. Now with that lower bolt loosened, I should be able to slide the tray right up and out. I had to disconnect I took this whole bracket that holds all these, I guess these are fuses or relays. What does it say on there? I don't know. All these wires and stuff are connected to this big bracket that was then had one bolt through to the tray. I just took that one bolt out to loosen all of that stuff. I also slid these connectors off, these 3 off of their mountings, and there's one remaining place under here. See that right there? Put my light on it. This little snap-in clip is holding the wiring harness from the bottom. I'm hoping I can get that out without tearing it up. Looks like it's a snap-in zip tie deal. Alright, with that loose, I think I've got one more in the back. Yep, there's one more back here. I'm going to see if I can sneak that out. Pinch it with my pliers and then pull it up from the top. There we go. Let's take a look at this battery tray as it came out. So if this would have been the front of the car, this was the rear, this would be the driver's wheel on this side. Here are the 4 bolts that held it in from the front. These 2 in the back. There's the slot that was that worst bolt that I had to get to from the bottom, from inside the left front driver's wheel. You can also see how the electrical connector mounts slide on and snap in there. This is the point where the last wiring harness was stuck through with that snap fitting, and one was here too. I think I broke that one, but I'll put it back on with the zip tie when I'm done. Alright, so we're getting closer to our goal now. With the battery tray removed, it was right here. Over here you can see we've got the ABS unit with all the brake lines going to it from the top. Down here is the transmission fluid filter that we're after. Right there. So next thing we do, so see if I can pull some of this wiring back out of the way, and this wiring harness that plugs into the ABS unit. We're going to get that off. Now we can get to the top of that filter. There it is right there, that black thing right in the center of the picture. I'm going to go ahead and drain the transmission fluid first before I take the filter off. I don't know why I want to do it in that order, but I decided to anyway. Just going to crack the vacuum on the transmission. I'm just pulling the transmission dipstick out a little bit so that it doesn't seal there. Have a little place for air to go in. And inside the driver's front wheel, if you look up and see the transmission, a large bolt is the drain plug right there, right in the center. And it's actually shaped such that you can put a 3/8 inch drive ratchet right on it. Like that. Alright, I've got my ratchet on the bolt. All I gotta do is back it out and drain the fluid like you would just like motor oil. Put your drain pan under there and go to town. Mine's a bit tight, so I'm going to put a little cheater bar on here. So at the end of this drain plug is a magnet. The purpose of that magnet is to capture all the metal filings and shavings and things that come off of the internal moving parts of the transmission. You don't want that stuff continuing to float around and travel through the passages and extend the wear. So you just wipe all that off, and they're tiny little metal particles and shavings, little slivers. But you've just wiped all that off. I already wiped it off and we could see it, but it was kind of caked on there a little bit. Not too bad after about 50,000 miles. I'm ready now to go after the filter. There's 2 bolts that hold the bracket onto the front of the filter, or I guess that would be the driver's side of the filter. They're 10 millimeters. That's a metal bracket that holds this fitting with the O-ring that fits into the end of the filter. So I'll start with the lower one. Looks like it might be a little easier to get to from below the wiring rather than above. I have more swing in my ratchet. Love these ratcheting wrenches. See, I put a rag underneath the end of it. I don't know if any or how much transmission fluid may come out, but figured I'd catch it. I gotta go with the box end. I mean the open end. I can't get the other end past that pipe. Once you get it loose, you can turn it by hand. It's my trusty magnet. Don't drop it. Alright. I'm ready to separate that and see what comes out. Just going to ease it on out. Oh, nothing came out. The O-ring is still intact. That's good. Alright, so next thing to do is to see if we can spin off that filter. Now if we look at the new filter, we can see the end takes a 24mm box end wrench. Fits right on the end, and I'll do that to the old filter and see if we can back it off. Oh, not hard at all. Suppose if you don't have a big wrench like that, you could use some kind of small strap wrench, or even put a pipe wrench or something on that and just right onto the body. I don't know if you'd want to do that to the new one. Got a lot of threads. Threads way on in there. Here it comes. Whoop. You can see down there where the filter came from. So it's just a flat surface against which the filter and the rubber gasket seat against the transmission. I just wiped that off with a rag just to make sure it was clean. So before I put on the new filter, and I've got a little more room in there, I figured it'd be a good idea to go ahead and address this O-ring. It's on the pipe that sticks into one end of it. I'll go ahead and take that one off and put the new one on. I'm going to take a little of my new transmission fluid and dip my finger in it. Get a little bit on my finger. And the purpose of that is so I can take the new O-ring and lubricate it a bit so it'll slide on there nicely. Hopefully it won't roll up as we stick it into the new filter. There we are. New O-ring in place. So the new filter here, it's got a rubber gasket around it, much like an oil filter does. And again, much like you do with an oil filter, you want to lubricate it a little bit. Again, I'm going to dip my finger in some transmission fluid, new clean transmission fluid. And we'll lubricate this O-ring. Spin it until it just touches the rubber gasket. And I'll grab my wrench and snug it up. Not too tight either. So that was maybe a quarter, not quite half a turn and I think that's plenty tight. Now the pipe with the O-ring, we'll try and sneak that back into the front of the filter. Put a little bit more transmission fluid inside of here. Worked it around inside just to make sure that's nice and coated so it'll slide. Let's see if I can just slide that on in there and make sure the O-ring seats and doesn't roll up. Pretty easy. Back go in the bolts. That's good. So I'm going to direct my attention back down here. The fluid drain is finished dripping, so I'm going to make sure I get the plug back in place. Don't want to forget the washer. Washer goes onto the plug. Magnet's all cleaned off. And again, I'll use my ratchet to tighten it up. Back up top now, we're ready to fill the transmission with new transmission fluid. Right here, I'll zoom in a bit. Here's the top of the transmission, normally the transmission fill plug, but since this is an O2 and it has had the second gear lubrication jet recall done to it, this extra pipe work and this fitting that goes into the fill plug was added some years back when that recall was done to lubricate the second gear. Supposedly it was supposed to take care of a manufacturing defect that didn't affect later models. But since we don't have a plug there, a traditional plug, we have to pull this out. It's held on by this 12mm bolt, so we'll take that off and we can pull that up and then have a place where we can fill the transmission with fluid. Now with that bolt loose, we should be able to pull this up. I believe there's it just fits down in there with another O-ring. Doesn't feel like it wants to come out. Here it comes. So we got the jet out. I hadn't really looked at this before, but you can see how it's designed. It's got a hole in the side. I guess that kind of directs some transmission fluid down against that second gear. There's an O-ring at the top. We'll clean that up. I don't have another O-ring, so I'll just wipe that down, re-lubricate it when we put this thing back together. So before I refill the transmission with new transmission fluid, I wanted to kind of get an idea of how much I actually drained out. I drained my drain pan, emptied it into this gallon jug. You may recognize that as a Chick-fil-A sweet tea jug. Best in the world, anyway. But, and you may be wondering too, no, the transmission fluid was not that black when it came out. It was actually still a very healthy rosy red color. But since I used my oil drain pan, it kind of got mixed in with some oil that was still in the drain pan. It was empty, but just had a little bit of residue in the bottom. So it looks like, since this is a 4-gallon jug, that I may have drained more than 3 quarts. I'd read that if you put the front end of the car up in the air, you may be able to get more out. So maybe I did. So I'm going to fill it up with the 3 quarts that I have. I may have to actually go buy a 4th jug if I can't get it quite up to the proper level when I refill it. I've got my funnel, kind of a long funnel, down into the fill plug hole. I'm going to go ahead and put my 3 quarts in there and see where the level ends up. All right, I've got 3 quarts in now. That was the 3rd quart. Clean off my old O-ring. more transmission fluid on my finger. Lubricate this O-ring again so it'll slide on in there nicely. Again, we don't want it to bind up or roll up, otherwise not make a good seal. Put a little bit more down in the hole. Okay. Push down on this really well, make sure that that O-ring goes in and seats well. There we go. This is the wiring harness again for the ABS unit. Okay, the battery tray is ready to go back in. A couple of things to note. You remember the battery tray has this, got this one hole. It's slotted. It's going to slide down over that troublesome lower bolt. We want to make sure that when it slides down in here, it goes behind that washer. Then there's the two anchors for the wiring harness. As you can see, it still has that pin on it that's going to stick through the hole in the bottom or the side of the battery tray. On the other hand, this one right here, the little pin broke off. So I'm going to cut that off, and instead on the battery tray, I'm going to use this zip tie. Slip that zip tie through there, and when I get this thing flipped over in place, I'll zip it up. Now I've got to go down and tackle the hard one from below. So back underneath now I can see that the lower bolt is in place. The slot is behind the washer where it's supposed to be. And I'm going to see if I can get my 12mm ratcheting box and wrench back on that thing and tighten it back up. Now that the bolt's tight, I don't want to forget to slide this electrical connector back up, plug it back in. Alright, this here is the bracket that holds this electrical assembly on here. You can see there's a hole down here at the bottom. It goes through here on this capture nut, and this bolt goes through from the back side. I didn't show you that when I took it off, but I'll show it to you now. This bolt takes a 10mm wrench. What do you think of that purple wrench, huh? Pretty manly. So now I can snap this part of the wiring harness back into that little place. There. Now that zip tie that I put into place earlier, now I'm going to reach around and secure that lower part of this wiring harness to the bottom of the tray. I just got to reattach these other parts of the wiring harness. They were secured to the tray, battery tray. The battery box and the battery go next. It just sits right on the tray, nothing holds it in place other than the battery itself. These wires go in these clips on the side of the battery box. Not too tight on this, just snug. And crack the battery case. Air filters next, followed by the air box and the air intake. This is the line that goes down to the EGR valve. Took a look in the throttle body, by the way. It's all pretty clean in there. Thought I might have to clean that. Good to go. Last thing to go on is the engine cover. All right, now I'll take it out and warm it up to normal operating temperature, then I'll bring it back and I'll check the fluid level. Alright, so just got back from a ride, maybe about 5 or 10 minutes, got fully up to temperature. To test these Hondas for proper fluid level in the transmission, the engine is supposed to be off, but warmed up. A lot of cars, you leave the engine running when you check the transmission fluid level, but on these, you have to actually turn it off and while it's still hot. So grab the yellow dipstick and wipe it off. Run it back down in all the way, make sure it's seated. Pull it back out. And what we're looking for is to see if we're between the two dots. Awful hard to tell. But for me, it looks like, you can tell in the video, it looks like I'm right at the lower dot. Let me try it one more time. Make sure the car is parked on level ground for this. Yep, I think it's right at maybe even a little bit below that first dot. So first thing tomorrow I'm going to go out and buy another bottle of transmission fluid and add that and bring it up to somewhere in the middle there between those two dots. Alright, thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments or just want to let me know how yours goes, let me know. Post it below and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks, bye.